An incredible feeling, and I just felt like everything that had worked for me entire life was for that moment.
This week on High Performance, Jürgen Henderson lifts the lid on life at Liverpool.
Talks about us leaving Liverpool, wasn't performing to the levels I was probably expected to. Criticism, I can't really control anything else other than give absolutely everything to try to save his life. That was a tough period for me mentally. He gets to me and sort of just like looks at us and says, and then he moved on, and I'm like, thank God for that. But when I did open up, that was massive for me. Looking back, I don't know how she stayed with us.
So what were you like to live with at that point then?
That's what I mean, horrendous probably. Yeah. Put everything into training, do extra training, do extra gym work, come home late, bed, up, repeat.
You were already burdening your wife by being silent, not being at home, going in the gym. You were burdening other people.
Without knowing. One of the first things he changed was giving absolutely everything, not just when things are going well. It's got to be every single day. And I've lived, breathed football all my life.
It's an interesting dynamic, manager and captain. So when you have a manager as brilliant as Jürgen is, what's your role?
Taking over from Stevie. Tough boots to fill. Most important thing to me is the players and my teammates. Somebody who my teammates could rely on and come to with absolutely anything. Losing the Europa League final, mentality of we've just lost, we just want to. And he was like, oh yeah, bad moment, but that's when you stay together, that's when you need everyone together. And also, by the way, this is just the beginning. As players, you took a lot of confidence from actually, well, this is just the beginning.
Listen, I want to say a massive thank you to all of our new subscribers, but you know, most people that watch this content on YouTube don't subscribe. I want to change that. The more subscribers, the more amazing we can make High Performance. And I've had a lovely message actually from Rob who says, I only recently discovered the High Performance channel and I watched the full Eddie Howe and Tyson Fury interviews, both some of the best content I've seen in the last 5 years on YouTube. Listen, if you agree and you want to keep this amazing stuff coming for free, then hit subscribe right now. Thank you so much. Well, welcome first of all. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thanks.
What is high performance in your eyes?
Oof, straight into the deep end there.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
High performance, for me, it's being dedicated to everything you do, really around, for me, football. Obviously training, going in every day, working as hard as you possibly can, doing the things at the training ground, but I'd say high performance links in off the training ground when you go home, what you're doing. And it's pretty much every single day around the clock for me, football, football, football. I'll probably get a little bit of switch off time when I'm with my kids, but apart from that, you know, it's constant, and just constantly trying to think of ways to improve, to get better, to recover for the next game with the amount of games we've got, thinking about other people, other players to try and help them, and what I could do better to help. So it's just a constant trying to improve all the time.
So it's relentless, right?
Relentless, yeah, it's a good word.
And where does that come from, do you think?
I think it's part of me. I'd say for me personally, it's part of my character in terms of I just love playing football, and I always have since I was a kid. Football's been everything. Right the way I started playing for Sunderland Academy when I was about 6, 7. And since then I've just loved playing football, dedicated my life to football, and that's been the case ever since today.
So I want to go right back to the beginning if possible. Your new book's brilliant, by the way. And early in it, you talk about your parents' divorce and the challenges that had on you as a young person, and how it's kind of not just shaped you as a husband and as a parent, but as a person as well. So what sort of daily behaviours, or what do you carry now that you think was maybe shaped by the experience you had of your parents breaking up at quite a young age?
I think all experiences in life help shape sort of who you are and the way you think, I suppose. I think in the book, when I speak about me mum and dad's divorce, it was a big thing for me. I was only around 6-year-old, so it was like my world had turned upside down, you know. It's a bit different if you were older and the way you think, but when I was 6, that was pretty traumatic for me as a kid and an only child with my mum and dad. So it was tough. It was a tough period. And looking back, I think the way I was as a child growing up, that sort of period shaped the way I was, in terms of I was quite shy and quiet, but I'd always have some sort of anger or self-belief to try to prove me worth and prove people wrong. And yeah, I think experiences like that definitely then shape you for when you get older.
Because looking at some of those characteristics that you display today, Jordan, like the ability to bring disparate groups of people together, the ability to smooth over difficult patches, look like some of the characteristics that maybe in your book you describe, you learn as the only child of divorced parents. Would you recognise that yourself?
No, not at the time, definitely not, and not probably until I started writing the book. You know, I think one of the good things about doing the book, even though I was a bit unsure at first, was after it, I would say I was a lot more self-aware of myself and how I think and what I do things, and think, really, was I that bothered about that situation that much? But at the time, it was a really big thing, and little things like that, I would think, right, okay, it makes you more self-aware. So definitely looking back, you know, when you do look back at situations that happened in your life, which generally you never do unless you're doing something like writing a book or something like that. So when I did that, there was definitely moments within that, and I thought, oof, actually, that I think looking back affected us quite a lot, even though I was really, really young and I could only remember certain things. And I think that's only one instance, but over the course of my life, I think there's been a few different things that have helped helped me grow as a person and shape us as a person, really.
Would you give us an example of one?
Well, that is one. You know, when my parents got divorced being young. Another good example probably would be when my dad took ill. That was probably a big one in terms of putting everything in perspective. Life in general, again, football is everything to me and always has been. But when something like that happens, it really rocks you and everything changes. And it's how you deal and cope with situations like that that really make you stronger, really.
See, but that surprises me when you talk about that an incident like that gave you perspective, because again, like reading your story, I think that one of the things that really emerges is your ability to put things in perspective. So, you know, you speak about your mate that you and him came through at Sunderland together, and you spoke about that sliding doors moment that you went on to progress in the professional ranks, whereas he plays for Gateshead, I think you said now. And I thought that was a really healthy sense that you appreciated the role of luck, you appreciated perspective. So I'm surprised that you say that your dad's illness taught you that.
I think what I mean by it taught me, not taught us perspective, but it gives us a little bit of perspective outside of football in terms of football is everything, you know, and you sort of put the blinkers on and it's football, football, football. And then something like that happens and it's actually football isn't that important in terms of what we're talking about. Health is the most important thing. Family is the most important thing. But you get that wrapped up, and when we're going back to Relentless, and you get that caught up within football and how much it means to me that, yeah, something like that can really shake up your world, really. In terms of perspective, I would say I'm probably better at putting perspective in for other people. If I'm thinking about others and talking to other people and thinking for them, I'm quite good at putting perspective for myself. Maybe a little bit different.
We'll talk about how you lead other people later on. But I think for people that are listening to this that don't know the story of your dad and what happened, would you mind sharing with us what happened to your dad and how you came to find out and what happened afterwards?
Yeah, so basically it was the season 2013-14 season, which actually that year came close to winning the league. But it was halfway through that season where my dad took ill with throat cancer, and he literally come down to the house, told me and my wife that he'd been taken ill. He had to go through surgery and chemotherapy and everything. And that was the first time. It was after we played Spurs away, I think, and won 5-1. And he came to the house, told us, and from that moment, it sort of changed everything for me. Yeah. I just had a little girl as well, who who's my eldest now. But yeah, everything gets put into perspective. You know, is my eldest gonna grow up without knowing who my dad or her granddad was? Things like that come into your head. So difficult period in my life, but actually looking back was probably a sliding doors moment of a change in terms of, for me personally and for us as a team on the pitch. Probably the opposite in terms of where we were going, and then in the end came so close to winning the league. So on the pitch was going really well, but off the pitch it was a really difficult period in my life.
Would you mind sharing with people who are going through maybe similar, it might not be an ill parent, but they've got challenges and they still have to perform, whether it's as a parent or in their career. How did you turn the trauma of finding out that the person who'd been with you every single step on your football journey was as ill as your dad was? You know, this is a serious illness. How did you then manage to walk out on a football field and play well, walk into training and lead the players? How?
Again, looking back, you know, when I was doing the book, it was like, that was, looking back, I was like a lot of pressure in terms to deliver, because I knew the way my dad was, he didn't want us to see him. So he knew he was going to look ill. He was going to be in bed in the hospital after surgery, chemo. He wasn't going to look great. So he didn't want to see us. So I couldn't go and see him. So the only way to make him better, he said, was by the only time I'm going to see you is on the telly playing. And the thing that'll help us get through it the most is if you're playing well and performing well and the team doing well. So again, thinking back, I was thinking, that's quite a lot of pressure to think I need to play well so my dad can sort of get better. But that was my mentality at the time. You know, it was like, I can't really control anything else other than I need to make sure that I perform and give absolutely everything to try to save his life, really, and try to make him recover as best he can. And that's what I try to do.
Were you thinking about him during games, like giving it your all, thinking Dad'll be watching?
Definitely before games, as we're walking out and things like that, which was, again, I just wanted the game to start, because when I wasn't in the game, I would be thinking. So before games, if I was in the tunnel and stuff, just before going out, I'd be thinking about it. But as soon as the game went on, I sort of just got lost in the game, concentrate on that. And then again, after the game, we won quite a lot at that period. So I was pretty happy and happy that he would be able to see us winning and me playing well. So it was a big moment in my career, really. Like I say, it was a moment where I felt as though it made us stronger as a person. I became a man in that period, I would say, and that really helped on the football pitch.
And I'm intrigued at how you harnessed that emotion of thinking about your dad, say like in the dressing room before a big game where it's an emotional environment anyway. How did you keep yourself on the right side of it, using it as a catalyst or a fuel for you to go and deliver a man of the match performance, as opposed to feeling overwhelmed by it, whether it's the responsibility or just the sheer bleakness of your dad's situation at the time?
I think there was a part of us that was angry. And again, it must happen to so many different people, and there's sort of the unfairness of it. You know, how can this happen to my dad, really, at this period when I've just had a daughter and things that are, it's the unfairness of it. And I know there's so many people that have dealt with this, and it's horrible, but you just think it's unfair, and I was angry. There was a part of us that was angry, and not knowing what was going to happen was difficult. So again, I couldn't really control anything other than what I'd done on the pitch. So in a weird way, I was just looking forward to getting on the pitch every time. You know, when I went home, I would be thinking about it. Straight after games, I would be thinking about it. So like, I didn't want to be thinking about it all the time, because it just like put us maybe like a bit down and thinking about it all the time. So I wanted to be on the pitch so I didn't have to think about it, and I could just concentrate on doing what I needed to do, and you're not thinking.
And how's your dad now?
He's good. Yeah, thanks. He's all good. Not long after that, he recovered really well and got the all clear. So in the end, it worked out pretty well. And I know for some, or a lot of people, it doesn't work out like that. So very lucky that, and very fortunate that it did work out in that way.
And does your dad remember any particular incident from watching you on the television, that something you did that gave him, that galvanised him or gave him a boost?
I think it'll be everything. You know, every time that he just probably sees us walk out at Anfield or walk out for Liverpool, it probably doesn't really matter how I play, really, if you ask him. But for me, it was important that I was sort of using that for him to watch and be proud, really. And like I said, looking back, that could have maybe went the other way, and maybe too much pressure, maybe too much, and not performed. But that it didn't, and it actually helped us in a funny way perform to the level that I probably hadn't performed to before. I'd say that was probably my first season or breakthrough season as a player, where I think people really thought, yeah, he's a Liverpool player.
It's a really interesting topic of conversation, this, isn't it? Because we speak often on the podcast about there are things that are hard for you, but they're not necessarily bad for you. And actually, this would have been a really hard period for you, but you can argue it wasn't bad for you. It taught you about emotion. It taught you that there's a strength in there that perhaps you didn't know was there until you went through this.
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, I'm fortunate that in the end of that, my dad was well, and that helps, of course. But yeah, you sort of learn a lot about yourself in difficult moments. And in my life, that was a really difficult period, but it showed us that I was strong and could get through it, and basically perform for him to try to save his life was the way I was thinking. And in the end, I think it helped him for sure when he was watching the games. And like I say, we're winning basically every week at that point. So he was over the moon. But I would say when we are talking about tipping over the edge, there was one game I can remember, Fulham away, where Brendan Rodgers was the manager at the time. And we got to the point where I think it was in January, February, where in December we'd lost a couple of games back to back, so it sort of put us out of the title race. But then after that, we'd sort of won every game. So we got to the point where we were sort of on the chase a little bit, and we're performing really well. So Brendan used to, before games, he used to get a letter from one of the lads' family members to say, basically speak about them and the team. And it was really good actually to bring the togetherness and use that sort of emotion and use people around us to try to help us perform and get over the line to basically win the league in the end. But I can remember Fulham away, it was my turn. So obviously I didn't know the players that happened, who didn't know. There was some really tough stories and tough letters in there. But obviously at this period, I was quite emotional anyway. My dad had written a letter to Brendan, and Brendan read it out in front of everyone, and before we head off to the stadium and play. And obviously my dad was just saying how proud he was of the team and me, and it's making him really
hard though at the time,
making him really strong, like watching it, and like I'm like sitting there like in bits really. I'm thinking, just stop reading, let's just go and play. So this is in the hotel before we go. And and then went and played the game, and actually I got too emotional off that. You know, it made us didn't really perform particularly well, done okay, but not to the level that I probably was the game or the few weeks before that. We ended up winning. I think Stevie got a last minute winner in the end at the time. So we ended up winning the game, which was great. But I can remember that was the only game where I probably got the emotion, probably got the better of us, I would say.
See, it's interesting you recount that, because when we sat down with Stephen Gerrard, we asked him about the letters and whether that it almost over arouses you, you know, because that game against Chelsea where he slipped was the one where his letter had been read out. And we spoke about whether that it can be really powerful, especially for others listening, but whether for you as an individual, it just does tip you over that edge of emotion.
I think when it's really raw like that, for me, it was really raw. It was still happening. So yeah, it probably in that situation for me personally. Don't get us wrong, I still played the game, but probably just wasn't at the same level as I had been. But yeah, I think for everybody else, like when I was listening to other people's letters, like it made me feel like more together and more everyone, we're like a family sort of thing. We're all trying to do it for each other and each other's family, and it was a really good thing. But I know what you're saying when it's you, and especially when it's that raw. It can be quite difficult.
So can I ask you about, you've made a couple of comments about you learned a lot about yourself during that period and you felt like you became a man was the phrase you used. I'm interested about what you learned about opening up and communicating, because again, if I read about the very much before and after of your dad's illness, before it, you had this view of, I'm not going to tell anybody, I'm going to keep this all bottled up, this is private. But it was your dad that went and opened the floodgates when he came into the club and told Brendan Rodgers about his illness because he knew you wouldn't do it. Would you tell us what you learned about communicating better or being more open with your emotions and how that has helped you?
I'd say I'm still working a lot on that, but it is a lot better, I would say. When I was younger, I'd find it hard because I just feel as though I didn't want to burden other people really with my problems or whatever was happening in my life. I know everybody's got their own problems. So in this instance, I didn't want to go in and burden other people with my issue, but also for them to think or treat us any differently because of what I was going through. I didn't want that. I just wanted the things to be normal, just we're playing football, we're going trying to be successful. So I didn't want anything different in that sense. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't want anybody to know. But when I was younger, I would say I wouldn't open up. I would be quite, what would the word be? I'd be quite introvert in terms of I wouldn't want to tell anybody if I was suffering or if I was in a bad place. I felt as though I'd need to get through it on my own. There's only me that can change it. So
What was the belief that you had that made you behave like that?
I think it was just the way I was as a kid. You know, I was only
maybe because you'd seen your parents go through that tricky divorce, you didn't feel in a position to go to them with more problems. You were like, there was an issue in this family.
Yeah, I think.
And you were an only child. Where do you go?
Yeah, I suppose, you know, when you're looking at like that, like when I was the only child and my mum and dad, when you go way back, like I had to deal with that on my own, really. I was only, 6, 7. I was quite young. The person that I probably would go to would be my nana, which was me dad's mum. So she was the only one I would probably open up to, if anybody.
And did you open up to her much?
Around the time of divorce, I would be with her a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. She was the one I would go to, stay at hers, speak to, and always be with. I can remember that. And then I was really close to her growing up until the point she passed away. So I lost when she died. It was a big thing for me because I lost the person that I probably confided in the most. But when we're going back to why wouldn't I open up? I just felt as though I didn't want to burden other people. I think that's the top and bottom of it, really. I knew other people have got so many things going on in their life. Is what am I going to say? I'd say when I was in a pretty dark place was when maybe I'd just moved to Liverpool, wasn't performing to the levels I was probably expected to. Talks about us leaving Liverpool. I'd worked so hard to get there. I'd only been there a year. Criticism, a lot of that comes with that. People wanting you to get you out the club, to leave. You know, social media. We all know how hard that can be. So there was a period when I was young, around 21, 22, when I just signed for Liverpool. My first season didn't go particularly well, so that was a tough period for me, like mentally, to get through. And again, I just wanted to get through it on my own. Even I couldn't looking back, I think I mentioned it in my book as well, like I probably didn't even open up to my wife. You know, I didn't want, which looking back, I don't know how she stayed with us, to be honest. I don't know why she just didn't get.
So what would you like to live with at that point then?
That's what I mean, horrendous probably.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how she didn't get out in the car and drive to Sunderland and left.
Yeah.
I didn't know, because I'd basically put everything into training, do extra training, do extra gym work, come home late, go and watch the telly, like in a dark
So
room.
doing everything you can
Just
to not be thinking about the fact that
yeah,
you were in a
just
difficult
trying to
place.
keep busy, really, just try to improve and prove people wrong, to get to where I needed to get to by just doing extra work, extra training, being stronger physically. So come home late, watch the telly, bed, up, repeat, and that was it.
But can you recognise now that what you considered to be selfless, of not wanting to burden other people, could be perceived by those close to you as being quite selfish in many ways, because you're not letting them in, you're not allowing the people that love you and care for you to be able to offer solutions?
Definitely, 100%. Must have been difficult for my wife, definitely, at that period. Again, me not opening up to her, and she's having to basically go through, and like you say, and probably thinks I'm being selfish. Probably my best friend, who I went to school with since we're 2-3 nursery, probably thinks selfish. Why didn't you come to me? I'm always here for you. Why couldn't you? But I didn't want other people worrying. I didn't want my best friend, my wife, my mum and dad to worry about me struggling because of football. There's much bigger things going on in the world. But for me, football was everything, especially when I was 21, 20. I didn't have children. Football was it. That was my everything. Obviously, when I've had kids, again, changes a lot, and everything's about them. But yeah, at that period in time, football was the biggest thing in my life, and it wasn't going particularly well, so I suffered a lot.
So one coaching technique is often called third-person coaching, where you'd say, what would you say to Jordan if he was sat there? And you almost do it as if you're somebody else having that conversation with him. So what would you say to Jordan now if you were that sort of insular, bound up, uncommunicative character that was going through a tough time? What advice would you offer them now?
I would say definitely speak to anyone. Now, for me, my biggest problem was probably burdening the people closest to us, or feel as though I'm burdening them. So my wife, my best friend, my mum, my dad, my sister, whoever it may be, didn't want to really go to them, even though they knows the best, because I didn't want them worrying about me. So what I found in the end that was really useful was speaking to somebody who wasn't going to judge and didn't really know us that well, and I could open up to, and they weren't bothered at all. They just tried to help us. So that person for me was probably Steve Peters, who in the time of, again, around the time of my dad getting ill, us challenging for the league, Steve Peters come in, Brendan brought him in, who's a psychiatrist who'd worked in different fields, cycling being one.
He worked at Rampton as well with serial killers, hadn't he?
So, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating.
So when Steve came in, I was at a point where I felt, well, I haven't really got much to lose, and actually maybe I do, because it was Steve come in, speak to everyone and said, listen, if my door's open, if anybody needs to just chat about anything, whether it's football, whether it's not, obviously it never gets back to the manager. It can't, because of his profession and everything sort of personal between.
Was there talking about that manager thing, was there a thought in the back of your mind that I don't want people to see a perceived weakness here, I don't want the manager to think there's an issue? Definitely.
And I think for players that is a big thing. You'd never want the manager to think you're not in a great place because you're not a player, really. Obviously that sounds harsh, but mentally, if you're not in the right place, then he's got to think about winning games and performance. And so if you were a manager, you probably think, well, he's not in a great place, so maybe I'll just keep him on the bench or whatever. So yeah, you would never want the manager to know any details if you felt as though you were going through a tough time. So, but Steve made it very clear that even if he wanted to tell the manager, he couldn't, because it's like a doctor, really. You know, if you speak to they can't tell anyone else. So I really felt that was genuine, and that you could speak to him, and nobody else would ever know.
See, it was interesting because we met Sir Chris Hoy on the podcast where Steve had worked at Cycling.
Yeah.
He described to us how you'd almost be seen as unusual if you didn't go and speak to the psychiatrist, rather than what you're describing as the other way of you're worried about going and the perception of being seen by him.
Right. Yeah. I don't so much think it would, well, sort of, yeah, you wouldn't want people to know, because I suppose they'd think, oh, is there an issue? Has he got something? But Brendan brought him in for a reason, to help.
There you go.
You know, so at the same time, you know, he wanted, I suppose, the players to speak, but you do fear that actually will players or the manager think something's not quite right, but I would say when I did open up and I did speak to Steve, that was massive for me. Massive. And again, it could be a coincidence, but I don't think it was. It was that period where everything changed, really.
So
for me.
Without breaching the confidences or making you feel exposed in it, but what kind of things did you speak about, and what was the effect that it made you feel?
It wasn't so much like, it's not as if Steve had these crazy ideas that were amazing that nobody would ever. It was actually just an open and honest conversation, but it was with somebody who was sort of looking at it from the outside. So it wasn't with me best friend or my wife who's involved in everything and only cares about me. It was somebody who actually is looking at it from the outside in, and putting a bit more perspective on it and having an honest conversation about it that way, really, which really, really helped. But also just me, just being able to come out and say everything I wanted and being honest and open as possible. Even if I just talk nonsense for an hour, when I walked out, I just felt a million times better.
It is amazing, isn't it? How just sometimes having a conversation, you sort of, I don't know, you almost feel like a light's been turned on or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
How is it? It made me feel like that. And I think this is a really important part of this podcast episode, because I still think that there's this feeling that a lot of people walk around with the same feeling you have, which is, I'm struggling, and it might not be a huge struggle, it might only be a small struggle, but I'm struggling and I don't want to burden anyone else with this.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we all know that when it comes to, working on your mental health, the only person that can do the work is you, right? But you should not do the work on your own. You need allies. You need people to stand alongside you. You need to be guided and shown where to go before you can do that work. And as you know, a lot of footballers listen to this podcast, so I think we'd love them to hear you talking like this. But also, we have a huge swathe of young men that listen to this podcast, and so many of them will feel that same feeling you had, which is, I tell you my problems, I'm burdening you. And I would love them to hear you sort of talk about how enlightened you've been. Actually, that isn't what it does to people. If you now go to your wife tonight and say, I've got a bit of an issue, is she going to feel burdened, or is she going to say, thanks for telling me?
Yeah.
Because it makes our life so much better together.
Yeah.
You were already burdening your wife by being silent, not being at home, going in the gym. You were burdening other people.
Yeah, without knowing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I was quite lucky that Steve just come along, because I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't looking for somebody to speak to. I wasn't looking to open up to anybody. I was just sort of cracking on and doing what I felt was right for me. But I'm very fortunate that Steve ended up coming along in that period of time. And again, I see it, I speak in my book, how I'm very lucky with the career that I've had. And that was a really big moment for me, a lucky moment that he just stumbled across. And it really made a massive difference. So I can understand people not wanting to speak to the ones closest to them, even though it would help if they did. And it's about finding somebody who you feel comfortable to open up. And actually, I found sometimes somebody by speaking to somebody on the outside of your little world can really make a big difference in putting perspective on everything.
So interesting, because I would hate to talk to someone that I didn't know.
I thought that.
Whereas I would, with my wife, I'm like, I love you so much. I want to tell you this thing rather than the other way around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe I I tell her too much.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I tell her.
But everybody's
works for me,
different.
you know? Yeah.
Everybody, I suppose, you got to find what's right for you as well. People would want to open up probably to people that's closest to them, and that would help them. But for me, it was probably a bit different and the opposite of that. So I think it's finding what works for you. But I think if you are struggling, I would say mentally, I would say try to make a conscious effort and finding out what is going to help you feel better, whether that is speaking to a family member, speaking to a friend, or actually speaking to somebody completely out of your circle. Because I didn't, and maybe if I had that conversation earlier, that would have took a lot of time off that. Yeah. I would definitely say make a conscious effort if you can.
And I really want to talk about the positive stuff here, by the way. Like, I want to talk about building culture, winning titles, what Jürgen's done for you, what Brendan did for you. But I think before we move on, we've got a really unique opportunity here just to have a brief conversation about the scrutiny on footballers and the conversation around footballers and the impact it has on them. And, whether it is you arriving at Liverpool and questions that, made you go and seek a conversation with someone and put you into a really dark place, or whether it's, much more recently, a teammate of yours, Trent Alexander-Arnold, all that noise around a guy who was in his early 20s on a big stage, doing his best. I'd love just to give you a platform to kind of open up to us about what it's actually like, the impact it does have on people. We had Danny Cipriani say to us recently, he doesn't believe that footballers in this country are free to express themselves and play in the way that they could because of scrutiny, because of pressure, because of thinking what will the impact be? There's no freedom anymore because there's so much opinion surrounding people. Does that ring true?
Yeah, I suppose in a certain way. I think there's a lot of footballers get a lot of criticism for a lot of different things, and actually, in the teams that I've played in, 99% of them have been top people.
Yeah,
great people that do a lot for other people that do go above and beyond for everybody else, treat staff well, do a lot for charities outside of football that people won't even know about. So maybe I've been very fortunate, but whether that's been England and players at different clubs, Liverpool, Sunderland, some great people. And I haven't really come across anybody that I would say that I didn't really get along with, really. Yes, you have arguments, yes, you have fights and things like that, but when I look back, as a person, I would always see good in them, really. There's not one player I would say I look back at and think, I hate him. I wouldn't even want to speak to him, wouldn't even want to.
And then you see the vile abuse coming their way on social media. Would you tell us, for people that think it's just a throwaway tweet or a little comment that they don't see, what is the true impact?
I think it does have an impact. I think social media has grew since probably throughout my career, really. I would say at the start of my career, social media wasn't really that big. But as my career's gone on and on and on, it probably started when I went to Liverpool at that sort of time when I was around 20, and it's grew and grew and grew and grew. Now, there's a lot of positives in social media, as we all know, but I think it can definitely have a negative impact on players, for sure, when there may be loss of form, loss of confidence, whatever it is, and then obviously there's people piling in on top of that, which might just be tweets or comments on Instagram, whatever it may be. It's easy to see. You could say, well, just sort of don't go on social media, just delete social media and you haven't got that. But somehow it always seems to find you.
Yeah.
I would say as a player, especially at the top level, I would say, somehow, whether it's your friends have you seen this and why is he saying that, trying to protect you, but it's coming to you that way, or maybe in the news, or when you're doing interviews and you're getting asked questions and it's like, all right, so it'll always find a way so what's sort of being said, whether that's the fans or the outside world. And if it's a tough period and tough time, is so difficult for players, especially young players, to deal with. But unfortunately, that's sort of come, a lot of people say, well, that's sort of part and parcel of football, and footballers get well paid, and that comes with the territory. You've got to sort of deal with it. But suppose when you're a young kid, you don't really think about money, or you don't think about like being a superstar or people looking up to you, really. You just think about playing football. As a kid, you just want to be a footballer because you love playing football and you look up to the people that are playing at that time. So to then get to that stage and have to deal with that, it can be pretty tough. And I think as well, you look at ex-players that have played the game and know what it's like to then in the media see some of the stuff that they do see. I find that even more difficult to accept, really. That I know that they probably wouldn't accept when they were playing and wouldn't think it was fair when they were playing, but they come out of that and all of a sudden they use other people for them to be a platform for them, but not really thinking about the impact that it's having on players now. So I find that hard to accept as well. And
so would you tell us, Jordan, like we interviewed Grant Hanley before the Euros last year, and he was talking about, he described himself as being unapologetically old school. And one of the things that he struggled with was coming in the dressing room and seeing his teammates, the younger ones, going on social media to almost determine what the view of their performance was, rather than looking around the dressing room and going, ask for feedback from the people in there.
Yeah.
So when you go in like the Liverpool dressing room after a defeat or a setback, do you see teammates
to be fair, there's a lot of lads go on the phone. Now, whether or not they're going on social media to see whether the fans have said they've had a good performance or not, I don't know. But it is a lot more mobile phone orientated after you go in the dressing room. Now, we try to get the music on, and especially when you win. You want to celebrate you're winning the game. That's what you're playing. You want to win. So get the music on, try and celebrate. But of course, it's not long before people are on the phones.
I think your self-worth, though, is wrapped up in it. And I think it's easy for people to say, oh, just ignore it or don't go on there. I work with former players who, as soon as there's an ad break, you phone. Look over, not only on the phone, they're typing their name into Twitter to see what
the comments are.
Yeah. And I actually have a slightly different viewpoint to you, where you're like, oh, I couldn't even imagine doing that. Like, I know that my bosses see it, and I know that football fans at home see it, and I know that the pundits that I'm working with see it. And my opinion actually is, if they're all seeing it, I'd like to know what's being said. Now, I really struggle with it. It's the biggest source of my own, like, not mental health struggles, but my stress. It's the biggest source of stress in my life. It's just whatever I do since I've been a football presenter. It happened less when I did Formula One and other stuff. But again, social media was different then, right? So I think it's just because it's grown in the time I've worked, but that you do your best. You're just trying to pay your mortgage, feed your kids, right? You get in the car to go home and it's just pelters, and you're thinking, you've got no idea, what is involved in making a TV show. So there was a reason why I did this or did that or said this or said that. It gets taken out of context entirely.
Yeah.
But then you then have people on Twitter going, can you explain that, please? And you think, not here. The place to explain to you why I did that, and I might not get things right all the time, is absolutely not on Twitter. The place to do that is, if you really care, like, call, find a number, send an email address. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's not dissimilar for you that people are making a judgment on your performances or your teammates' performances with 5% of the knowledge of what is going on. Ring a bell?
100%, yeah. 100%. And I mean, it's sort of easier for me now to deal with because I'm more experienced and, I've gone through that stage. But when you're a young player and you're coming into that honestly, it must be so difficult to deal with when you're maybe not playing as well as you can, or the team's not performing too well. And when you're at the level that we're at, it can be really difficult. And you see, when you're watching players play, you can see the confidence is gone and they're not quite the same, and all of that, all that negativity mustn't help at all. So if I would say if it got to a point where you felt as though social media or other people's comments were starting to affect you, come off it. come off social media.
What else do you do to put your arm around those players that are struggling?
I try and help a lot in terms of the younger players, not only me, there's great leaders within our team, great experienced players that'll help the younger lads come in and feel comfortable within the dressing room and feel like they can go and express themselves and do what they're here to do, really, and perform. But also that set standards, that the young lads come in and they know what's expected to play for Liverpool and to be in this dressing room. So we've got a great balance of that, and I think that comes with, you got to recognise actually when somebody is struggling, and you need to try and help them in the best way you can. Everyone's different, so you've got to approach it in different ways. Yeah. But I try my best to sense when I think somebody needs a bit of help.
See, there's so much stuff that I want to ask you that I find fascinating around you. Some of it is paradoxes that really intrigue me around your story, Jordan. I think one of them, just in relation to this conversation here, is around, we talk about social media and that comparison culture of being caught up in what do they say? What do they think of me? And at the start of your book, it's really intriguing opening where you say, you can't compare me to Graham Souness, you can't compare me to Tommy Smith, you can't compare me to Phil Thompson. And you list all these great captains of Liverpool where you almost go out your way to avoid the comparison, to say, I'm not in their league. And I think I get, having met you, the selflessness of not wanting to be seen as being big-headed or trying to put yourself in that category. So I'm interested in terms of that sense of self that you have, that integrity, that self-confidence, without getting dragged into that comparison culture that you seem to avoid. I'm just interested in how you consciously do that.
In terms of my own self-belief?
Yeah, because you've obviously got, like there's a real strength in you. And I want to come back and ask you about my favourite story in your book because of that.
No, I know what you're saying. And looking back again when I was doing the book, there's definitely a self-belief, definitely. I'm probably just not one that likes to talk about it, really.
I said to you, my favourite story in the book is when Roy Keane comes in.
Yeah, we're all sitting in there.
Like, tell us that story, because I love the fact that, like you say, you're a shy kid, you don't make a fuss, you've got a reputation, you beat that horrible term, you're busy because you're staying behind doing extras, your dad's helping you with it. And then Roy Keane comes in. Tell us the story, because I think people will love that.
So we had a game. It was a friendly game at Sunderland under 21s or 23s at the time. Away to Gateshead, which isn't far, half an hour or so from Sunderland. So we had a game at Gateshead. Wasn't great at all. Didn't play very well as a team. I don't even think Roy went to the game. I think it was his staff that went to the game. And yeah, really bad day. Let's put it that way. But anyway, we're getting the coach back to the training ground from Gateshead, and while we're on the coach, our coach has come to us and said, everybody's got to go into the training ground when we get there because the gaffer's coming in, Roy, to see us. Well, everyone's face just went white.
Remind us how old you are at the time.
Must have been 18. 17, 18, I would say. And anyway, we all go into the training ground and we're sort of waiting in this room. And then Roy comes in and says, we're basically like sort of scattered around the room. And he sort of starts off with something like along the lines of, I'm not allowed to swear on this, am I?
No, go on.
I can. He said, he said, this sums you lot up. Here, there, get together. Scurrying together, and we're all like in like half a semicircle, and he's at the front. And like literally he just goes like round everyone individually, like around like, I think somebody had just signed and said like, we've just paid whatever for you, and who do you think you are, and blah, 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 going round and talking about like the game not good enough, and basically went round and it was heated, and I'm just standing there like thinking, If he comes to me, was just dripping with sweat. But anyway, he gets to me and sort of just like looks at us and says, "Do you think you could play in the first team?" And just me respond, I don't know how or why. I mean, his response was just like, "Yeah." And he went, "Good." Because the staff said, "You're the only one that was running around," or something along them lines. And then he moved on, and I'm like, thank God for that. I can relax a little bit now. But it was intense, you know, and I suppose in that moment, I didn't know why. You know, normally I would maybe have, but I was self-belief, just, I do.
Because you describe yourself as being lucky, but like that definition of lucky is when opportunity meets preparation. And that to me in the story was, that's your opportunity, but you back yourself. And that's the bit that really stood out for me.
Yeah, I would always back myself, but I would always back myself inside. I never really seen the point of coming out and backing myself and speaking and talking and telling people about backing myself. I never really felt why? I'll just sort of do me talking on the pitch is how I seen it.
How you develop that then, because I'm interested in the stuff that goes on. So if I'm a coach at Sunderland, I'm seeing this really quiet lad that's coming in and just getting on with the job, and you're running around, even you're not being dragged down to the level of what everybody else seems to be descending to. What is it you've done that people listening to this could go, I want to have that quiet resolve, that inner steel to be able to stand up? So what were the kind of techniques and tips that you could pass on to build that sense of confidence to back yourself?
Honestly, looking back to certain things, I actually don't know. Is the honest answer. Like, I just did it. And the only thing I can probably think of is I felt as though I was always the one that people never backed. I was always the one that was maybe second best, or people never thought I'd make it. They always thought somebody else, like one of my friends, would make it because he was better. Or if it was like player of the year, I'd maybe win it, but joint with somebody else when I was really young. So I always felt people would never back me. And that, I suppose, then brought like an anger inside. So when I played, I sort of let that anger go. And I still now I'm quite emotional when I play. And I was like that when I was a kid. You know, I was so emotional when I played because I used all of that negativity and that anger from people doubting us when I was younger to when I was on the pitch. I just used that as me sort of fuel really, to just really prove people wrong. And I suppose that's, in a way, that's where the self-belief comes in, you know, because it's like, all right, well, you're doubting us and you're doubting us and he's doubting us, and there's that many people, you know, that I felt would doubt us, and it would be everywhere really, whether I was in school, whether I was at the academy at Sunderland. I just always felt as though there'd be somebody that would be doubting, and then I'd take that sort of personally to sort of prove them wrong, and that's where.
And would you tick it off once you'd proved them wrong? It was like, next.
I wouldn't tick it off, because I never felt as though there was a point where I'd be like, I've proved you wrong. You know, so for
surely when you're lifting a Champions League trophy or a Premier League trophy,
maybe I'd say the Champions League trophy was the moment that changed everything that I'd ever been searching for and wanting my whole life, for that moment to come, and everything that went what I went through to get to there.
Tell us more about that. You said that winning the Champions League, lifting that trophy, changed everything.
Yeah, for me, for me personally, I just felt as though that was everything that I was striving for, to win a trophy. But the Champions League trophy was the one that, you know, looking back, watching Champions League games at my house or my friend's house, went to a Champions League final with my dad at Old Trafford when I was about 13, around that time, to then finally win it after losing the final the year before was just an out-of-body experience, really. When it happened, it was just an incredible feeling. And I just felt like everything that had worked for me entire life was for that moment.
Amazing. Well, let's talk then about life at Liverpool under Jürgen Klopp. When he first arrived at the football club, when did you get the sense that this is someone that could bring something special, and what happened to make you think that?
Honestly, the first day, I know it's easy to say that now, but I think if even the fans, you look back to his first press conference, I think straight away everybody was in and knew we're on a journey here. But for us, it was the same. First meeting, first time I met him, the aura, the presence, just everything about him really was this. It just felt special. Obviously, had a bit of background before he come at Dortmund. I can remember seeing, I think, the story in the book about when we went for Carra's leaving do and went to watch Dortmund play Madrid in the Bernabeu. And I think it was the semi-final, so they ended up qualifying that night for the final to get in the Champions League. But the way they played, Dortmund, the players, like the way it was incredible to watch. And I really felt like watching it, that really suited my game and the way that I played football. So when Jürgen come to Liverpool, I was quite excited that actually I feel as though this could really benefit and suit me in the way I play football. At the beginning, it didn't turn out like that because I was injured. I'd just been made captain not long before. New manager coming in, you want to impress, you want to be there, especially as captain. So I had a foot issue, which was really difficult. Again, injury, we talk about mental health, but for professional athlete, injury is probably one of the hardest periods to go through. And I had one of them when Jürgen first came. So it was really difficult for the first 6 months, or I think he took over in like September, October time. So that first season when he come in was difficult for me. But the impact he had on the team from the word go was incredible. On the end of that season, I think we got to a Carabao Cup final, lost on penalties, and we got to the Europa League final and lost against Seville. So, but from that moment when he first came in to that was actually, you could see we were going in the right direction. And it probably wasn't until after that season when I really then was fit and playing pretty much every game.
And can you remember what he said or did in those first couple of weeks that made you sit up and realise that you were at the start of something special?
Everything. I mean, from the first meeting, and he was speaking to us as a group, just how clear he was, the understanding, his presence. You just felt as though like everybody was just like locked on,
Isn't that always the way though with a new manager? Because all of your hopes and dreams as a footballer are wrapped up in this person as well.
Yes, but Jürgen's really impressive, I think, as a person. I think like if he was speaking here, like he's just so charismatic and just a really impressive person when you meet him, really. Very self-confident. And that came across to the players straight away. And I think the first game, I can remember I was injured, but I went down to watch against Spurs, and the impact he had within the first couple of days in that game was crazy. Like the stats, the running stats, the intensity watching the game was off the charts, really. Now I know a manager can have an impact, but this impact for me was another level, really. So training sessions, I couldn't train, so I'd sort of be watching from the balcony at Melwood, or I'd go outside and try and watch training just to get a feel of what it was like. And it was just like completely different to anything I'd ever seen before.
Like what?
Just the sessions that were put on. It was just like, wow, this is just totally different to anything I've ever done. And so to watch it was hard enough. So to actually be doing it.
Anything he got you doing, you're thinking, or not you, but you were injured, but the lads, and you're thinking, what is this?
There was, I suppose a lot of it was the intensity level of everything, you know, was through the roof. And a lot of it was making you think about the next situation quickly without having time to dwell or anything like that. So whether that would be like a shooting session, rather than the shooting sessions that I'd done in the past would be, you maybe played in, someone set you, finish, you know, you get in a queue or whatever and you do little sets and finishing and you work on it after training. But even with a shooting session or something as basic as that became this sort of, you'd be passing, then you'd be receiving one straight away, then you'd have a shot, but then the cross would be coming in and you're just constantly having to think about. So the first time that you do it, it can be a bit of carnage, really. The balls flying everywhere and they'll be pulling their hair out going, what you're not getting, you know, and it takes a little bit of time or once or twice to go through it to get the hang of it. But once you get going, you're sort of watching it and it's just happening so quickly.
And how challenging was it for you that you were injured when he came? Because suddenly all these lads have got the chance to impress this new manager and you're thinking, hold on a minute, you only get one chance to make a good first impression.
Yeah, that was really tough.
Yeah.
Really tough, especially when I was captain of the team. So I tried my best to watch training sessions. So when I was back in, I knew sort of what was going on. Yep. I travelled with the team to games. I wanted to be around as much as possible to take as much information from him as I could. Even though I couldn't train and play, I wanted to get a feeling for what he wanted. So when I was fit, I sort of knew and understood exactly what was needed. So yeah, I'd travel to all the games and sit in the stands, and then I'd watch training as much as I could. Obviously got my own rehab plan as well.
And is that a bit of self-preservation? Like, I'm here, I'm going to be around, I'm going to stand, I'm going to stand 2 feet from you at all times to remind you that I'm the captain.
Yeah. I think the gaffer looking back was a bit like, haven't you got rehab to be doing? Like, why are you here, sort of thing? You know, he's thinking, yeah, why is he? But I think he understood that there was probably a little bit of insecurity there from me.
But even that is great management, like to allow you to feel that he understands that. I mean, I guess there was one-to-ones as well. Do you remember what was said in those early on?
Yeah, no, Jürgen's great. It was always been great on one-to-ones, you know, always makes you feel good. And you feel as though it's genuine and he's being honest as well. So yeah, every time I'd speak to him, it would be fine and great, and it would be like, can't wait to get you back in and things like that. But then I might not see him for a few weeks because I'm not training, you know, I'm on a different schedule to everyone else. So it was difficult at that period in time. And like I say, it took probably a bit of time for me to then come back, get proper fitness and get going from there, which probably was after his first, well, not full season, but first season he came in.
Now, dressing rooms, especially at sort of the elite level that you're operating in, can be pretty brutal places where you're feeling somebody out, you're looking for that weakness. What was the moment when, with Jürgen, that you realised that he'd been tested and you thought, this fella's the real deal here? Was there a particular incident or anything that stands out for you?
What, in terms of doubt from the dressing room?
Just knowing that this guy is credible, that he's going to take us something special.
I think you felt that from what he did at Dortmund,
right?
You know, and what he already achieved and the way he was. You could sense that straight away. That's what I'm saying. There was never any doubt for me, really. Looking back, there wasn't doubt from the dressing room, from the players, and he was very, very demanding and intense. And at times it was a bit like. I can remember when he first come, one of the first things he changed was normally for most of our career, up until that point, we'd just train in the morning. You know, it'd be like come in for like 9:30, 10 or whatever, train at 11, half 11. But we're training at like afternoons and times that, like if we're playing on a night game, then we train later on the day. So maybe if it was a night game at 7:30, we wouldn't train at 7:30, but we'd train closer to that time to sort of get the body ready for that time of playing, which actually when you think about it, sort of makes sense. So we started training at maybe 4, 5 o'clock at some times. Well,
those creatures of habit, were they moaning?
Yeah. So at that time, it's a little bit like 4 or 5 o'clock training. So you're coming in and you've sort of had a full day. And then the lads were coming in and they felt a bit lethargic, or they felt a bit tired. And especially at this time of the year now, 4 or 5 o'clock, it's getting dark. So you're going out, the floodlights are on and you're just starting to train. So it was about, this is tough. So anyway, the lads pulled me, a few of them, and said, listen, what do you think? Like 4 or 5 o'clock, could we not have it earlier? And like as captain, I felt as though like I needed to at least ask the question. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to go up and speak to the gaffer. So I went up to the gaffer and I said, Gaffer, I said, a few of the lads are struggling with these late training times, feel a bit tired and stuff. And is there any way we could sort of train in the morning? And he sort of looked at us and said, who said that? Who's moaning about it? And I thought, I can't say any names here. I can't be chucking people under the bus. So I said, well, there's quite a few, Gaffer, and that's why I've sort of come, because there's only 1 or 2, obviously, but there's quite a few that think earlier training. And he's just gone, well, tell them, if anybody's got an issue with training time, tell them to come and tell me and speak to me directly. So I thought, oof, okay. That's the last time I ever go and ask for anything like that again. So I've walked out and gone to the lads and gone, you've got no chance. But if you want it that badly, just go and speak to him yourself. Well, no one ever went up.
See,
no.
See, the reason I asked John is that, again, looking from outside in, I was always intrigued by some of the decisions that he made early on, where, he let people go out on loan and left himself short at times, whether it was in defence or he made some decisions that I think was setting down the standard of, you put the team above your self-interest, this kind of discipline and things like that. And that's what I'm interested in, how he laid down the marker, like the training times, whether there were other incidents where he thought, this fella's not going to compromise here. We have to get on board with his ways, not the other way around.
Oh, that was like that from first minute. Yeah. So there was no again, that being the perfect example of training time. There was just no way. It was, this is the way we're going to do it, because I know this is what works, and I know by doing it this way we'll become successful. And if you don't want to do it that way, then there's the door, really.
And
it's
did he do that with players?
Yeah.
Did he show them the door?
Yeah, I think so. I think if players didn't particularly like it, or they couldn't really cope for whatever reason, then I think the gaffer at the beginning always said that if a player wanted to leave, he would never stand in the way. And I think straight away that sets the tone to think, even for me, it's like, oh, okay, like, I remember being linked to other clubs, and it wasn't a complete shutdown at that moment, which again plays on your insecurities a little bit. But looking back, that's him setting the tone, as if to say, I know what his success looks like, and if you're not on board and you want to go elsewhere, then no problem. But this is the way we're doing it, and get on board. And to be fair, majority, if not everyone, get on board pretty quick, because, like I said, he's really impressive. What he'd done before at Dortmund and Mainz, the way he played, you knew that if you got on board, then you got a good chance of being successful, and that's ultimately what you want as players.
I always think it's easy to judge someone when they're successful because they're doing well, right? I'm very interested in what people are like when the success doesn't come. So what was he like in that first season when you lost the Europa League final and you lost the Carabao Cup final? And do you remember that? There was then that narrative, wasn't there? And again, people like me probably responsible for it in the media about Jürgen Klopp doesn't win finals. Do you remember that conversation that people were having? So I'm interested from the inside how he dealt with all of you to keep you believing. Really.
Brilliant. Totally different to what I've ever experienced and what you probably think he would deal with it as like. But the perspective that he thinks about them things is incredible. I can remember losing the Europa League final, and that was the second final losing, I think, that year. And going back to the hotel where, if we won, there'd have been a party and all of that sort of stuff. And as a player, you just, so down. It's a big moment, you know, European final, lost. You just want to go to bed, really, and just try to just sleep, get up, go back in the morning. But I can remember there was like a few of us just sitting in the corner, just because he basically said, everybody, when we get back, everybody's down to the reception bar area. And we're thinking, right, okay. So everybody comes down, and a few of us are just sort of sitting in the corner with sort of our tails between our legs, thinking like, what we're doing here? Like, again, just different mentality of, we've just lost. We just want to, but he sort of seen it the complete opposite. Come over and said, are you going to be like this all night? Like, why are you so miserable? And we're like, Gaffer, we've just, and he was like, oh yeah, bad moment, but that's when you stay together. That's when you need everyone together.
Oh, brilliant.
And also, by the way, this is just the beginning. This is just the start. So
that's what he said.
Yeah, and then by the end, he basically went, I want you all on the dance floor by the end of the night. And we're singing We Are Liverpool. He's singing We Are Liverpool, and everybody's saying We Are Liverpool.
What did that do for you?
That completely, my mind was like, what? Like, this is like just totally different to anything that I've ever experienced before. And to think like that, so close to losing a big game, give me definitely so much confidence to think, but he's so confident that this is just the beginning. He's singing like he's obviously looked at it. We've done so well to be able to get to the final from, he's only started maybe 7-8 months ago. So he could see the signs of improvement, and he knew it would continue in that way if we carried on doing what we'd been doing, and he knew he needed everybody together to be able to do that. So actually, in the end, I think as players, you took a lot of confidence from actually, well, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that was a big moment looking back. I think I mentioned that in the book as well. It's a big moment.
When was it when he texted you to say we'll go again? What was that after?
It wasn't text. It was I think what you're referring to was that after we lost to Madrid in Kiev, Champions League final.
Yeah.
So that was the year before we won the Champions League final. And again, in difficult moments, that's when he's really, really good. You know, yes, he's very emotional, and on the sideline, he's very animated and stuff. But actually, in the dressing room, he's not like that when the game's on. You know, when he's speaking at half time, he's very clear in what he's saying. He's not shouting, and he's very clear, and you can understand exactly what he wants. And it's the same after games or after big moments, big defeats, that the perspective that he has, and he knows that ultimately it's just a blip or bump in the road, you know, and you can use it to be stronger. And every time we've had one of them, he's always dealt with it in the best way, and we've always responded in the best way.
What did he do after Kiev for you?
Kiev was the one where it was like, don't worry, we'll go again.
Yeah.
You know, again, I don't think many people at the start of that season would said that team would have got to a Champions League final. And I think he could see the bigger picture of that. But when you're a player, you know, it's the end of the world. You know, it's a dream of playing in a Champions League final. You never quite know if you're ever going to get to play in another one. You know how difficult it is to get there. So it's the end of the world. But so close after a defeat to say, don't worry, we'll go again. And again, people can just see that. But when he says it, there's a genuine belief, and you feel that from him.
Look what he said after the defeat in Paris, live on the telly 5 minutes after when he's being interviewed. He said, book your hotels in Istanbul. And obviously you're getting the same messages. And I tell you what I think is interesting about this, right, is if when you lose a final and a manager comes around and goes, you didn't perform, you didn't deliver, you let us down, and you go back, even if you then go back, right, and get into another final a year later, in that final, you're looking at the manager thinking, you threw me and the rest of the lads under the bus and blamed us a year ago. So when we win, we'll win for us. We won't win for you. What you've just described is a manager creating a situation where 12 months or 24 months later, you are desperate to win, for you, of course, but you're looking at that manager thinking, you stood by me and protected these players when we lost. So now when we win, this is for you as well.
Definitely.
Well, there's interesting research on this there's a guy called Daniel Kahneman. He's like a Nobel Prize winning psychologist, and he looks at how your memory works. And this is why it's intriguing talking to you about Jürgen, because there's three things that he says your memory will throw up. So when we ask you about Jürgen Klopp, you'll think about the first meeting you had with him, which you said, the charisma, you knew you were onto something. The last occasion you've met with him, whenever that would have been. But the time that stands out is how he dealt with the times when emotions were at their highest, whether that's the crushing disappointment of a defeat or the elation of a victory. How he behaves in those moments actually defines him in your memory. And what you're describing is he was exactly the same after those victories, winning the Champions League, as he was after.
Yeah, I probably don't remember the victories and how he was, because everybody's just celebrating and everything's great, it's.
Yeah.
But you're right, in the tough moments, you do remember them clearly. And it stood out to me because it was completely different to anything I'd ever experienced in my life before. And the way that he thought about things was totally different. So that helped me massively in terms of my thoughts and my mentality, because after a defeat on a weekend, never mind a Champions League final, I'd stay in the house for 2 or 3 days. I didn't want to go. So to change that for me was huge, really.
Brilliant. We're going to move on to our quickfire questions now and wrap this up. One last question, though, before we move on to these. It's an interesting dynamic, manager and captain.
Yeah.
So when you have a manager as charismatic and as brilliant at conversing and getting to people's hearts as well as their heads as Jürgen is, what's your role in this manager-captain relationship? What are you like at halftime? How are you the day before a game or on the coach heading to a match?
I don't like to think about it too much because I'm just me.
Right.
Ultimately. What I would say is that Jürgen helped us a lot in terms of dealing with the captaincy. I think there was a lot of pressure when I took over as captain, taking over from Stevie, who was arguably the Liverpool's greatest ever player and captain. So tough boots to fill.
What did he say to make that easier for you?
So yes, before he come out, I knew from the outside that the perception would be different. But again, coming back to the inner self-belief, I knew that I was the right person to lead the team. And I felt as though I could lead the team, which is why I took the role on. If I didn't, then I would have said, actually, not the right time, choose somebody else. But I felt as though I was the right person and I could do it in the way that's my way. And I'd been given captaincies when I was younger. So I always felt that there was leadership qualities within us anyway, which is why I'd been asked in the first place. So there was definitely a self-belief inside again. But I knew from the outside that it wouldn't be the same. You've got Steven Gerrard, like I said, one of the greatest players of all time, then handing the captaincy down to Jordan Henderson.
Down or across?
Well, down at the time, I would say, from a lot of people's view. But yeah, so I knew that I needed to deal with that. I knew that was going to come, and I knew I needed to deal with that as best I could. And that was difficult, that was hard, a lot of criticism, it's easy to jump on the bandwagon at that moment in time. And again, things like that made us stronger. But when Jürgen come in, I can remember him saying that I take too much on my shoulders, too much responsibility as captain. I need to delegate things more, relieve us a little bit more, and actually just focus on what's best for you to help the team. So he helped us a lot. He still does. He's helped us a lot, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch, and how I am as a person, and how I am as a leader. Really, he's really helped us in that sense, and that's helped us grow into the person I am today. And he'll still do it now. If I do something wrong and he doesn't quite like it, I'll be in the office and he'll say, "Nah, you can't do that. You can't." And I've learnt things over time that actually, I didn't realise that could be maybe taken. One of the best examples probably is when I'm not playing. I can take it not personally, but as a player, you always want to play. So when you're not playing, that can be really difficult. And And there's been moments, again, I've improved this a lot I'm still improving, but I've improved it a lot since the gaffer first came in, where you're not playing, it's how you react. And again, for me, if I wasn't playing, I'd be taking that as somebody's doubting us again. And I would go sort of in my shell and think, okay, I'm not in the starting 11, I'm not playing, okay, I need to prove them wrong. And that can come across differently, especially when you're captain of a team. You know, you've got to react differently in them situations, because if other players are looking at you and seeing that you're not quite reacting in the right way for the team or in certain situations, then they're going to maybe follow that when it happens to them. And it was never a bad situation, but it was something that he felt as though I could improve on. If I wasn't playing, then deal with it as best you can. And I think as players in general, it's so difficult when you're not playing, especially, yes, when you're injured, but when you're fit, it can be even more difficult because you're ready, you're fit, and you're not playing as much as you like, or you're not starting. And it's about trying to deal with that and respect your teammates, which luckily I've had an amazing teammates over the past that do that. But you still have this anger inside you where you want to prove them wrong, to say, well, I'm not starting this one, but I need to make sure that he can't leave us out again.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the lads and a lot of players use that anyway when they're not playing.
See, a nice bit of feedback for you was when we had Gareth Southgate on the podcast, and Gareth spoke really glowingly about you as one of his cultural architects. He spoke about you and Harry Kane as setting standards in the group and welcoming people and creating a culture where people felt they could come and be themselves and thrive. So what one piece of advice would you give to somebody listening for this about how you can set the tone, like whether you're a leader or not, whether you're in the team or not, what you can do to create a culture where people can thrive in their own worlds?
For me personally, I would say leading by example would be giving absolutely everything, every single day, not just when things are going well, or, you know, it might be, I don't know, you might be in a good moment or doing it for a few months, and it's got to be every single day, you know. And I've lived, breathed football all my life. That's all I've loved for many years. So I take it very seriously, and I want to be the best that I can be. So by listening to people like me managers, me coaches, me teammates, doing extra work on the training ground, in the gym, to ultimately be the best person I can be, which then ultimately helps the team become successful. And also one of the biggest things when I took the captaincy on was being somebody who my teammates could rely on and come to with absolutely anything. I wanted to be there for them for absolutely anything, that whether it was off the pitch, on the pitch, and they felt a trust and, like I say, somebody that I could look to and rely on and go to with certain things. That was a big thing for me when I took the captaincy on, and it still is now. You know, I still try to help as many players as possible, teammates, Liverpool, England, try to pass on my own experiences that's happened in my career so far. But at the same time, I'm still learning as well. You never stop learning, I don't think. You can always learn all the time. I learn from other players. I learn from me managers. So, yeah, I'm not sure whether that answers your question,
No,
but
it does.
I basically dedicated, I would say, when I took the captaincy on to the team. And they're the most important thing to me is the players and my teammates. And I've dedicated, all of that off the pitch stuff and on the pitch to try and help them.
Nice. Right. Quick fire questions. Are you ready for these?
Not really. I'm not good at these, mind.
Come on now.
Never been quick fire for me, but let's try.
What are the 3 non-negotiables that you and the people around you need to buy into?
Hard work.
Yep.
Togetherness. Is
Nice.
that one? Unity.
Yeah.
Being able, giving absolutely everything for each other. And so we've got hard work, unity, or togetherness, and what could be the third one? Respect.
Very good.
What's your biggest weakness and what's your greatest strength?
Ooh. Is this a quick fire or is this a
No, still quick. Possibly not, though.
I think one of my biggest strengths can actually be one of my biggest weaknesses. Because one of my biggest strengths, I would say, is helping other people or trying to help other people. And that can be my biggest weakness because I take too much on for other people, basically, which can have a negative effect at home, family life. And I know that because my wife tells us all the time that I'm sometimes never there. I'm there in person, but mentally I'm not. I'm always thinking about football or something that's happened or stuff like that. So I'm always thinking about how I can help at work or football, which can take a lot away from my family, which is a big weakness for me in trying to balance that, really, I would say.
What advice would you give to a teenage Jordan just getting going in his career?
Not to worry about stuff as much, or not to care about stuff that's not important as much. There's a lot of stuff, again, looking back when I was doing the book, that there was stuff where I'm thinking, like, why am I even worried about these things? But little things I do think about, and I do. So I suppose, again, that's part of who I am, but it can have a negative effect. So which I'm trying to do now after writing the book, is try to not worry and get wrapped up in certain situations when you don't need to.
If you could go back to one moment of your life, what would it be and why?
Champions League final. Well, I've said that too quick because I'm thinking about football. Obviously, when my kids were born was the most special day of my life. I've got 3. So we'll just put that to the side, because I think everybody who's had children will understand what that feeling is like. But for me personally, in my career, would be Champions League final. As we spoke about before, everything to get to that point, dreams, hard work, dedication, sacrifice, failure, everything that went along with that to get to that moment just made it even better, really. So definitely I'd go back there.
It's great. And the final question, your one last message really for people listening to this. I often like to think of this as maybe something that you would tell your kids, right, for the life that they're going to live. What is your kind of one golden rule for people listening to this, for living a high performance life? Your kind of final message really for what you'd like people to think and do.
I think we've spoke about a lot about today about mental health, haven't we? And I think that's so big in society now. I always speak about mental health a lot, but I think everybody suffers and goes through bad moments in their life. And it's how you deal with them moments. And I think looking back, I was very lucky to have the people I had around us, the people that came along to help us deal with them moments. And other people aren't so lucky to have them people around. So I would say for them people to reach out to anyone if they are struggling, if they are going through a bad moment, not to feel like you're burdening other people. And if you do feel like that, I would say speak to people that is outside the circle, which really helped me massively. And I think that would be my message from today. I haven't spoke to both of you, would be for people that are struggling to definitely speak, because as we said before, you can speak to somebody even if you feel as though you've got nobody that you can go to. Even sometimes I'll go for breakfast or to the coffee shop and I'll have a chat with a guy who I go to the same place all the time, and there's a guy who is 90 called Walter, and he sits on the table next to us like a lot of time, and we'll have some just conversation about anything and everything. And after I've had the chat, I just feel so much better. I don't know why. I feel really good that I can just speak to somebody. So if you feel as though you haven't got somebody that comes to your head that you can speak to, even if you just go to a coffee shop or go somewhere and speak to a complete stranger about anything, it can help.
It's brilliant. What a great way to end. You know what? That's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you for giving us
so
you. Much of
Thanks for the time.
Your precious time. You know, there's two things that stand out for me, right? I think the first thing is you've come to the realization that life is a team sport.
Yeah.
You know, I think of like a 17-year-old Jürgen Henderson who thinks I can conquer the world on my own. I'll win the trophies. I'll be successful. And even when you were struggling at Liverpool, didn't speak to your wife because it was up to you to deal with your problems. And I think you've realized, like many elite people have, that actually you have to talk, you have to share. You can't solve all your problems on your own. And I think the other thing that's really sort of stood out to me from this conversation, you know, as well as realizing you need other people around you, is that like nothing comes for free. And I think you, as you come towards, not at the end obviously, but as you come towards the end of your career, you're going to have to learn to be really kind to yourself, because you're no longer going to have football to judge yourself against. Did I win 3 points? Did I play really well? Have I helped that young player? You know, you're going to not be able to judge yourself with those metrics. So the only way to do that is to realize that actually you may well struggle again.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. You've had the amazing highs.
Yeah.
But then other things can come your way as well. Nothing comes for free. And the intensity that you've spoken about a lot in this conversation, by the way, that is the reason why you are a Premier League, Champions League, Liverpool captain, because of the intensity. It might not be nice sometimes, but without that, you don't get everything else.
Yeah.
So I wish you the very best in the future, man.
No, thank you very much. Thanks for the time.
Brilliant.
One more thing I would just say before we go is I would say, just when you were talking now, I was thinking, don't be afraid to show vulnerability as well. I think that's important. I think people, when you're vulnerable, you don't want to share that you're vulnerable or show that you're vulnerable. But actually, I think that can have a positive impact on people being able to see the real you and wanting to help you as well. So I would say vulnerability isn't a weakness to show. Like if you show vulnerability, it's not a weak thing. You know that you're vulnerable. There's been plenty of times in my life where I've been vulnerable. But when you do share that, I really feel the support, and people then really do help you. So I would say don't be afraid to show that as well.
It's nice, man.
So thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks very much.
Just a quick one to say thank you so much for watching this content on the High Performance channel. We would love it if you would subscribe. You know, most people that watch what we do don't subscribe. If you can subscribe, we can make this bigger, better, bolder than we've ever done before. So hit subscribe right now and help the High Performance podcast make a real difference to the world. See you soon.